Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Toejam Earl Panic on Funkotron. In the last part, we went through stages 13 and 14, and now it's time for us to tackle stages 15 and 16, starting off with the bottomless pit here. Layout-wise, this is probably the most complex level in the game, in that at the start, you're effectively in the center of the level, and there's a pit there with 4 branch-offs on it. 2 on the right of the pit, 2 on the left. If you fall all the way down to the bottom of the pit, you respawn at the top. We need to find all 21 Earthlings in this level scattered across those 4 paths, and then fall down the pit again, which will take us towards where the launch pad is. I personally like to start with the top right path here.
Yo, Toejam.
Hi, Flarney.
You still looking for Lamont's favorite stuff?
Yep, you know of anything around here?
Well, there's his favorite lumpy pillow. It's a great pillow.
It is?
Yeah, I borrowed it, but then I couldn't decide which head to put it under, so I gave it to Charla.
I don't suppose you can give me directions to get to Charla.
Oh, sure, I'll get directions. You just go up, I mean, over to the back.
No, I mean, to the front. Well, take your time, Flarney.
Maybe you just
better
follow
follow
the
the
arrow
arrow signs.
signs.
Thanks, Flarney. The top right path here starts in this large room that has a bunch of hidden items in it, but very few Earthlings. The main goal here is the door dilemma.
Hi, TJ.
Hi, Otis.
You wouldn't happen to be looking for Charlotte, would you?
How did you know that, Otis?
Oh, young boys are always looking for young girls. It's the way of the world. Well, I remember when I was young, it was just...
Excuse me, Otis, but do you know where she might be?
Oh yeah, I was getting to that. Young people are always in a hurry. Seems to me that when I was young...
Otis!
Oh, right. Well, just go through these doors here in the right order and you'll find her.
What's the right order?
Oh, you'll figure it out.
Thanks, Otis. The door dilemma is a pretty straightforward door maze. One door takes you to the next layer bit, whereas the other ones will return you to the prior layer, if not the start of the area. In order, we need to go through the door on the bottom left, top right, bottom right, then top left. Doing so will take you directly towards where Charla is, and then we'll be done on this path, leading us towards where Lamont's favorite thing is ultimately. Each of the 4 rooms is also landmarked by a different plant. Otis is in the middle of the first room, the second room has the yellow hay-like plant, the third room has the pink bulbous plant, and the fourth room has the purple bush.
Hey, Toejam.
Hi, Charla. So, are you crying because you're happy or you're sad?
I'm not sure. Both, I think. No, wait. First I was sad, then happy, then sad. I think I'm on happy now.
That's good. Say, Flarney told me you might have Lamont's favorite pillow.
I did. I was a little upset, though, and I think I left it somewhere.
Where's that?
Well, if you go through this door and then look for a secret door behind some fire, you'll find it.
Thanks, Charla. So going through this door will take us from where we are right now in the top right room set from the central pit to the bottom left route. And we need to put a lot of coins into parking meters here to actually put out the fire for a few seconds. We need to do this for 2 reasons. For one thing, there is an Earthling at the end of this pathway, so we need that in order to leave the level. But for another, the door that leads towards Lamont's favorite thing is hidden in the middle of this first fire chunk. Specifically right behind this foreground element, but we're not done yet. This only takes us to a secret spot. There are going to be 2 signs pointing downwards in here. Each of these point to different invisible doors. In order to get to the Lamont's favorite thing, go in the secret door below the sign on the right. The sign on the left leads you back towards the main fire path area. Having found Lamont's favorite pillow, we have now found all 10 pieces of his favorite stuff located throughout Funkotron's various hidden areas. Thus, we're now not only going to get the best ending, but also a major point bonus at the end of the game. This also means what few levels remain in the game are going to go by much faster, as there's not going to be any more sidetracking I need to do in order to get a piece of Lamont's favorite stuff. Mind you, again, not too many levels left in the game at this point. As I said earlier in the LP, this game has about 17 to 18 levels. Level 16 is the last full-scale level. Level 17 is the last level that has humans to capture, and level 18 is just ending. So, we have nearly concluded our adventures on Funkotron, and probably the only Toejam Earl LP I'm gonna do. I, again, might do the 3D game at some point, but I'm more likely to do that than the first game or the 4th game that's a spiritual successor more so to the first one, because I just don't care for that layout stuff as much. Although not for nothing, I did learn apparently at one point earlier in development, Panic on Funkotron was going to be a lot closer to the first game, but they just decided to take a different route between, I think, the directors and Sega wanted something a little more traditional, or something like that. Future me, see if you can find the source on that, because I've definitely heard that a couple of times over the years, but I don't know what the actual source of it is. And if there isn't a source, well, that sounds right on the internet. At this point, though, we're now in the top left route of the level, which is not only the largest section physically, but also has a majority of the level's Earthlings. In fact, it kind of feels like they took the Earthlings that were meant to be on the top right portion on the way to the door dilemma, and then just throw them in here instead to an extent. And not for nothing. One of the game's more devious platforming challenges is in this section, but not because it's actively difficult, more because they play a ha-ha funny on you with the placement of platforms. More on that in a few moments. Also, one shortcoming with the Funk Vacuum that can come into play at some points, albeit it's very rare, because the animation for the Funk Vacuum is as long as it is, there might be times if you vacuum up enough enemies in one area where the first enemy to get captured might get released from their bottle by the time that the Funk Vacuum ends, so they might just be right on top of you. I've only maybe seen that happen a handful of times, and even then it's in very specific circumstances, but I'd in most cases recommend only maybe capturing up to 5 enemies with a Funk Vacuum just to be safe, especially if it's against, say, like the lady and her dogs, or in just very crowded sections to begin with. So I just went really out of my way with that set of platforms there to spawn into this invisible doorway so that I could get to this Trixie's Rendezvous. I believe this is another one where she gives you the power to not fall off of bubbles unless they pop outright. What's nice about this is that the rest of this section is more or less bubble focused, and this will go a long way just to help us get through it smoothly. But that's one of the more out-of-the-way doors to make spawn in. What you need to do to get that door to spawn in is, from where the door was, funk transmission into the wall, hit a specific point, fall down in the wall, into another point, jump to grab a present because you might as well while you're there, Funk Vacuum back out at the floor level, go back up to the door, hit the same first spot again after Funk transitioning back into the door, and then the signs will spawn in showcasing that the door is now there. This game has a lot of relatively specifically hidden secrets, but that's probably the overall most roundabout secret to get in the game for one you maybe only use in this one screen of the level. So coming up here, there's a platform. Jumping above this platform can make a present spawn in, but also reaching this platform to begin with makes a button spawn in on the far side near the entrance. That will especially be handy if you fall for the nasty little trick they play here. Namely, you might instinctively try to jump over to that third bubble I just went past. That bubble has a shorter pop timer than the one in the middle. The one in the middle is the one you need to land on in order to get all the way to the far western wall of Bubble Boulevard here and reach the remaining Earthlings on this route. That is one of the more devious platforming tricks the game pulls on you, but at least it's a pretty quick one to figure out after the first maybe 1 or 2 times you fall down. Otherwise, worth noting, below the bubbles we just floated on is a giant lake, but there are 2 little rock outcroppings near the western edge of it that look like you can jump from the top of them to get to the left edge there, but it's too high of a jump to make. But what is really weird is that most of the time when you're in the water in this game, you can only jump out at the edges if the edges are low enough. The edges of land that make up those little rock outcroppings are higher than most of the ledges you can jump up to out of the water in the game, but you can for them in specific for some reason. My best guess is that when they place those in the game, they specially programmed them to have a higher than usual jump tolerance, just so you didn't get stuck between them for some reason. Why they still kept them in at that point, I don't know. Maybe they just thought it looked neat. It's a little weird, but ultimately I don't mind it too much. At this point, though, we're now grabbing the Earthlings here on the bottom right route, which is just a quick platforming section over fire that leads to the rumble room here, where there is a guy in a box, a kid in balloons, and I think a cow ghost to worry about. At this point, we now have all of the Earthlings in the stage, so we just need to get back to the pit, which we can use a shortcut to get over there using the buttons along the bottom of the fire room, and then finish our time in this level. Moving on to the last normal level of the game, by and large. Technically speaking, 2 levels from now is still a normal level as well, but just a smaller scaled one. Like I mentioned earlier, falling to the bottom of the pit will now take you to the end of the level. It's actually one of the few times they make a transition zone like that actively change where it takes you to depending on what you've done in the level. Kind of surprised they didn't do that more often, because they could have done some really mind-warpy things with that, especially if they did a level themed around the Hyperfunk zone a little more directly. Albeit, I wouldn't probably exactly want that, because that would be a little too, heavy on the eye strain in long bursts. It's like playing any of the end levels of Moonchild from what I've seen of that game ever since that really popped off. I think that was earlier this year, maybe it was late last year. I've lost track at this point of how long time takes. In any case, welcome to level 16, starting off with Crazy Chasm here. There are a whopping 38 Earthlings to capture across this stage, and they throw everything at the book at you here because this is also our last normal scaled stage. In fact, The screen that makes up a majority of the rest of this level is outright titled The Final Battle, because I guess spamming Earthlings is the best thing they can do to make up equivalent to a final boss. So the Crazy Chasm is definitely a little bit interesting in concept, and I kind of wish they'd done a little bit more with this throughout the game in some cases. The thing is with the Crazy Chasm is that there's a door at the top left and the top right. That sends you to an alternate version of the map where there's more Earthlings placed around. Had they actively done more of that to maybe change level layouts as you go through doors to maybe have some alternating platforming sections, that could have been interesting, but they just leave it for this. And again, it's fine. Ultimately, I would say Toejam Earl is a game that is very solid in its fundamentals, but can at times stretch them out to make more levels out of itself, which I don't hate in concept, but it definitely needed a little more going on, as I've said before. Also, wait, I just realized I said only Toejam Earl a moment ago, not Panic on Funkotron, which is the more direct thing. Although, not for nothing, you could probably use that to describe the entire series. Because Toejam Earl 1, I'm not a co-op player to begin with, but that game in general, solid in its fundamentals, goes on a little long. The fourth game, that's kind of revisits to the first game's mechanic set, probably same deal there. Third game's the weird one in that regard, but I guess I'd say it's probably the same deal in general. I guess that kind of summarizes the series off the top of my head. So now we're moving on to the final battle part of our final main level here, where over half of the Earthlings for the level are. But here's the sort of twist here. If you think you finished this screen and try to move on to the next screen, and you haven't caught all the Earthlings yet, you're missing someone, either on this screen or in the two versions of the prior screen. That is where all 38 Earthlings in this level are. The remainder of the level after that might as well be considered a victory lap on top of final escape, so to speak. In fact, just to get a little ahead of ourselves here, the end of this level isn't in a screen to the right of this one. Instead, you need to go through one final underwater maze that you access via the bottom right of the little lake here in the middle of this screen. And not for nothing, it's one of the scarier parts of the game at large because it is such a wide underwater maze that you can easily run out of air. Thankfully, if you lower your way through it, you can find the pufferfish to restore your health pretty quickly, but be careful in any case. Before we get too much farther on this screen, we want to jump up here and press this specific button, though, to go meet up with Peebo again. Yo, Toejam. Yo, Peebo. Are you still trying to find things for the Funkopotamus? Actually, I think I found all the stuff that I can. Now I just have to go and talk to him. I hope you can even get him to talk to you. Why is that? Well, I went to see him and he wasn't exactly in a good mood. Don't worry, Peebo, it's simply a matter of knowing the right thing to say. Well, good luck. Thanks. Oh, and by the way, after you finish getting all the Earthlings, there's gonna be a big party at Lamonta's house. Awesome! I'll be there. So that conversation is a little bit funky in my eyes, where the way it's phrased makes it seem like if maybe you didn't have some of the pieces of Lamont's favorite stuff, Peebo will give you a general hint for where it was in the level you missed it. That's not the case. That conversation proceeds the same in Toejam, or Earl says they think they found all the ones they can, no matter what. Because no matter what at this point, you have found all the ones you can, because you can't go backwards in levels without using the level select. I guess maybe you could say it's to say, okay, they actively planned the party at the end of the game, but I feel like most players would see a party at the end of the game and go, oh yeah, it's because we did the thing, and be good with that. We didn't need a conversation about that. A good part of me wonders if the entire reason Peebo is here is to actively make it so that there's an active NPC you can talk to in every level, because otherwise this level would be completely friendless. And if that's the case, hey, that's kind of a neat idea. Probably could have been placed better, but, well. Either that or complete dumb theory time. What if this game was programmed in such a way that every level needed to have an NPC, otherwise levels wouldn't boot correctly? I doubt that's the case, but frankly, given some of the shit I've seen in other games where if they remove one file, everything crashes, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some level of truth to that. Note, there's probably absolutely no truth to that. There is one weird part to this level I've avoided until now, though, namely, there's an invisible pit right here on this hill. Down here are the final 4 Earthlings in the level. And you can just spray and pray with jars to hope you get them all, but honestly, it's just better to use a funk vacuum at the end of the day. Specifically down here is a little girl, a female tourist, a boogeyman, and the baseball kid. Now, for nothing, the tourist can make this a very easy place to die in on a first one, especially if you're lower on health. But that's why I recommend either a panic button or the funk vacuum just to get them all out of the way. Funk scan regularly otherwise, and just hopefully you make it through that pretty quickly. From here, it's now time to go through that underwater maze and make it to the end of the level. And like I said, this is easily the largest underwater maze in the game. In fact, depending on how you explore this area, you can find up to 3 other exits to it, but they all lead to dead ends, directly called yet another dead end, one more dead end, or still another dead end. There are items in some of those, like there's a hyperfunk zone in yet another dead end, there's a couple of presents and a hamburger and ice cream cone for healing and one more dead end, and I think there's just a parking meter you can do something with in the third one. But you have to go really out of the way to find the proper exit here. You start towards the top left of the map here, with the top left properly being one of the dead end exits, but you have to make your way down from that, slightly to the right, down further, and then back down to the left to find the proper exit over here at the way out. Thus concludes our final full-scale level of the game. All that remains for us now is one victory lap level and then the ending. Which means good news, Toejam and or Earl, you only have so many collisions with the screen left across the game. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 10, it's time for us to finish off the game. See you guys then.